Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of the Dynasty Fantasy Football Central podcast. I'm Michael Moore. He's Jonathan Scott. Say hello, Jonathan.
What's going on, people?
Um, yeah, so we made it 13 episodes, Jonathan, albeit over the course of, say, 3 or 4 months. But hey, that just means room for improvement. But
Yeah.
so we're catching up now with week 5 and 6, and how we usually do this 3x3 podcast that we call is looking at 3 stories dynasty-wise from the previous week, and then 3 stories for the upcoming week. And then at the end, we'll go over the updated dynasty quarterback rankings on the site. So let's just get started, Jonathan. Let's look back at week 5. I think the biggest probably development, if you want to call it that, for at least dynasty players was probably Odell Beckham. Would you agree?
ODB for sure. So this is somebody you and I disagreed on about quite a bit coming into the season, but everything that he was advertised to be, which was fast, good size, good body for his size, excellent hands, and what was odd, I won't say odd, and it was hard to really see for sure in LSU in that offense because they just throw so infrequently, and it's not a very varied offense. He's not running the entire tree. But he had one play. There was one, and it was incompletion because Eli Manning overthrew him, like basically threw it out of bounds. But there was a play where he was about 10 yards behind the cornerback for the Falcons. I can't remember his name right now. And he just set him up with the stutter move that was so sick. Like just absolute Victor Cruz stuff. And you combine that kind of route running, the touchdown he had was absolutely just him high-pointing a ball at its highest point and grabbing it and just beasting somebody. Plus the fact that he's a legit 4-3 guy. Man, you're looking at a number one, like a legit number one on that team, and probably in fantasy. Not this year, obviously, but going into probably next year, I see him filling that Jordy Nelson role in the Packers offense. Man, he's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I don't think I necessarily disagree with all that. So looking at the numbers, it was 4 catches, 44 yards on 5 targets, and the 1 touchdown. Which was encouraging that, his first game back, he's already getting, I would say some good attention. I mean, you had Preston Parker, which if you're asking who that is, you're not alone, lead the team in receiving yards with 61, but will that happen every week? No, I don't think so. And you've still got Ruben Randall there, but for only catching 4 catches out of the 10 targets he had, I can't believe that's very encouraging. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe the Giants coaches are going to keep doing that if they've got a guy like Beckham and wouldn't give him a shot. I mean, is that crazy?
Well, so I should be more prepared for this. I actually watched this game a little more than most games because I had people involved in it, and there was, and I can't remember his name to save my life right now, and I looked it up on Monday to verify, and it was right. Like, they targeted one specific cornerback. It was 16 times in that game. Which has been it's just a complete different mindset from the way the Giants have been the first 4 games of the year, where it's going to spread the ball, open man gets the ball, etc. Like, they were openly targeting that one cornerback, and I can't think of his name right now, and a lot of that came on Randall's side. Like, they were just throwing at him, and Eli left a lot of plays out there too. I think a lot of it was because he was forcing the ball in. It looks like it was because of game plan, which is just odd. I don't know why you're game planning against the Falcons to that degree, but I don't expect Ruben Randall to get the same load, to be about the same no matter what because he's Victor Cruz. The guy you may see slide a little bit is Larry Donnell. I think you saw it sort of between the 20s. And I'll say the Falcons did game plan against him a little bit. They had him in bracketed coverage, in and out coverage the entire game, which left the outside open. But now with that's going to happen every week. You now have to worry about Larry Donnell and Odell Beckham and Victor Cruz. People are going to have to sort of choose what it is they want to do. And if Eli plays better as he did this game, they'll be able to make people pay.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with Donald being sort of the guy left out. I mean, I think if anything, the most glaring weakness, I think everyone would agree with the Giants going into this year was the offensive line, right?
Yep.
And look, I think the Donald thing, yeah, he may be the start of the rest of the year, but I got to believe that production was kind of fluky, and that now that they do have Beckham back, I gotta believe they're gonna have the tight end position, whether it's manned by Donald or someone else, more inline, more blocking, so that they can give Eli time. Because look, they've got 3 guys now with Beckham running out there that can catch the ball. They don't have to worry about as many weapons as they didn't have before. So, yeah, and look, they spent a first rounder on the guy, on Beckham, so it's not like they're going to give preferential treatment to Larry Donald over Beckham. And look, I can't count the number of stories that I remember seeing about Randall this preseason, last preseason, about how frustrated he's making the coaches and how he's not taking advantage and blah, blah, blah. So I can't believe that, like, Ruben Randall and Larry Donald is going to be the wave of the future there. So, yes. But here's a question, though. Hold on. Here's a question. Right now, like, the Dynasty rankings we have Beckham at 30. So are you buying on that? Are you selling on that? Or is that about right?
It's just, again, situation meets talent meets production, right? So the situation is prime for him to step into that Hakeem Nicks role and be a more explosive version of Hakeem Nicks.
Sure.
And the talent is there and has been since day one. All the things you would worry about with a rookie receiver, you're not going to worry about with him. And again, he plays in a division that's not really known for defensive prowess. Even the injury history, I don't think there's not really an injury history there. He had a hamstring. Like, that happens. I get it. So in college, he was a relatively healthy player. There's no reason to think he'll continue to be hurt. So, no, I think he's going to be on that echelon of high-end twos by the end of the year. That if you have him and you got him in the second or third round for whatever reason this year, you're going to be extremely happy you did.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. So, all right. So I think we've covered probably Beckham enough, unless you have any parting thoughts on that.
No, just that I'm higher on Donnell than you are. I think he's a guy. He's not a star, but he should be a starter there. He has unique talents that are necessary for Eli Manning. I equate it to having a 30-pound heavier Plaxico Burress, basically. He's very athletic. He's pretty explosive for a guy his size. So. And
that's fine, but I don't know. There's too many mouths to feed at the end of the day, and unless
Ruben Randall's going to starve, like, let's not.
Sure, no, and I get that. I'm just saying they're not the Packers or the Broncos where they could feed like 4 receivers and it's possible 3 of them have 100-yard days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Next topic, and I'll let you choose between your San Diego Chargers or your Cleveland Browns. So which would you like to cover first?
I want to go, since we haven't been here in a while, I want to talk about Phillip Rivers, because this guy, and so...
We have not been here in a while.
No, it's been a few weeks. So, and over the last few weeks, this Phillip Rivers / Mike McCoy marriage has really blossomed to the point where we kind of thought it would, coming off of last year, but it's just now starting, I'm starting to realize, and it's being pointed out to me from just watching replays, listening to things around me, that, like, Mike McCoy is kind of a quarterback whisperer. He's kind of... Like, everyone sort of made the joke of, oh, he made Tim Tebow a competent quarterback, he can do anything. And then we didn't really think about it until he came to San Diego. Like, the ability, what he's doing to Phillip Rivers, he gives him the ability to see everything before the play happens. So Phillip Rivers now, through coaching, film work, whatever they're doing together, he knows what defenses are doing before they even do it now. And Phillip Rivers has never been a good athlete at all, but he is doing just enough physically to always put his people in position to succeed. I've never seen, like, Antonio Gates is 47 years old. He will always run this 15-yard shallow drag across the middle of the field. He will always be open, and somehow it's always there. That's all he ever catches. And everyone, it's amazing that it still works, but I'm realizing now it's still working because Mike McCoy has done such a good job of coaching this offense and recognizing weaknesses in defenses that there's just... It's so rare that they don't do the right thing almost every time. It's impressive. So Phillip Rivers, even though he's a little bit, he's 31, 32 years old, but
oh no, he's older than that.
I don't think so.
He is. Rivers is
32.
Oh, 32. My apologies. Okay.
So That's what I'm saying, man. When people think about Phillip Rivers, like if this really is his trajectory in this offense with this coach, in the next 5 to 6 years, that's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Like he's
Well,
tremendously undervalued.
certainly for dynasty purposes. I mean,
Yeah,
when you look at the quarterbacks out there now that are 37, 34 and all that, and you've got a guy like Rivers who's only 32. I mean, only 32. So,
yep.
yeah, and I think a lot of it is, and I read this, I think it was on ESPN, where really the game plan well, the strategy is more the quick strike, right? That's really what changed between the Rivers of old and the Rivers of now. But even before McCoy, he was pretty good. But I think they really made an effort to get fast guys that, at least on the outside. I mean, I don't think anyone would confuse Antonio Gates with a fast guy. But look at Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's not a big guy. He's not going to win physical matchups, but he's quick and he's athletic. And look, Keenan Allen was a #1 receiver last year in fantasy. Now, do I think he's going to be that way every year? Probably not. But, Rivers is very smart, right? I think we could agree with that. He's a smart quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think he sees the writing on the wall, too, and realizes, hey, if my line sucks, I got to get the ball out. And he does. And he's accurate, and it works. So, yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm very high on Rivers. And, look, besides Keenan Allen, I mean, there's not really like a dynasty stud that you could say, hey, they're making Rivers better. You know what I mean? Like he's player proof, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I would agree.
I mean, you could make a case that a guy like Matt Ryan has Julio Jones to make his numbers look better, right? Or
Sure.
Stafford has Calvin Johnson, or whatever. But look, there's no one in San Diego. You've got Vincent Brown, Eddie Royal starting opposite Keenan Allen. Right? I mean,
and Malcolm Floyd's actually had a bit of a mini resurgence too. I'm not saying it's a permanent.
Right, but it's a chicken and the egg thing? Is that a function of Rivers, passing the ball around, or is that really because Malcolm Floyd had a renaissance? I don't think it's the latter.
I think it's because so I think this is why quarterback play is so hard to judge. I think it's intertwined, right? So Floyd's healthy for the first time. So let's not forget, 2 or 3 years ago, Malcolm Floyd was a decent commodity to have. He was talented, fast, tall. People really liked him. Health has been an issue, and so has offensive functionality, man. When I talk about Mike McCoy putting people in a position to succeed, and then they always do, Malcolm Floyd doesn't get a ton of playing time, but when he does, his routes are designed specifically for him, and when they go to him, he's almost always open, and he almost always does his job. So,
sure. Yeah, and believe me, not to take away anything you said, McCoy has done a great job. And what's funny is, and I count myself in this group, a lot of people gave the credit to Whisenhunt last year,
right?
When he was offensive coordinator. And now that he's gone, and they're actually doing pretty good, and actually like way better than they were last year. I think it's good that McCoy's getting sort of the respect he probably deserves. So
yeah, probably your coach of the year the first half or the first quarter of the season in my mind anyway.
I would agree with that. I mean, with quarterback, unless you're Peyton Manning, we'll say, there's just a gluttony of guys in that next sort of level that you can get away with, right? Yep. Which I think really shows that for dynasty purposes anyway, it just I think shows that quarterback certainly is not the most important position in dynasty leagues, just like redraft leagues. I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, we can have that discussion. Is that fair to say?
Man.
I mean, I'm not counting the two dynasty or the dynasty league you and I are in together, our home league, if you will. It's a 2-quarterback league, so that's different. I mean, quarterbacks are essential there. But if I were in a single quarterback dynasty league,
no, then you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in one where my 2 quarterbacks are Colin Kaepernick and Jay Cutler. Like that's the depth that you have in the 1-quarterback league. So, unless you just got someone head and shoulders above like a Manning, who honestly I don't think there is anyone like that anymore. Maybe Rodgers. Well, okay, let me back up. Rodgers and Luck, I would put in that group.
I think Luck's there now.
Yeah, I would agree. And Luck and Rodgers and Manning. I mean, but look, Drew Brees has looked bad, quite honestly, this season. Cam Newton is hurt. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to come back for those two, but it's not happening this year. I know that much. So,
That's fair.
But I think it's fair to say Rivers has worked himself into that conversation of that sort of second tier. Is that fair?
Oh, easily, yeah. And I could make an argument that as long as him and McCoy are together, that he should be in that first tier because the numbers he's putting up, and it's a year and a half, it's a year and a quarter now. It's not a fluke. Like what they're doing is really, really impressive. And like I said, it's with people that are replaceable parts.
Right.
After they get someone across from Keenan Allen, and they actually let Lardarius Green do things, like this offense has room to grow. So
yeah, and that's an excellent point. Yeah, if they actually draft a Alshon Jeffrey type receiver who can go up and get the ball, then watch out. So
or lineman, lineman too.
That would help. Yeah. And look, it's just going to make those Chargers-Broncos games pretty entertaining. So
they're pretty fun. Those are going to be a lot of fun.
Right.
I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Well, let's go from a positive story to a not so. Well, no, it's okay. I think the Browns are okay this year.
I was going to say I didn't
they're
know
2-2. Yeah, there's hope there. But specifically, I think we wanted to first touch on Ben Tate. Which really. I don't know. Can you call it a conundrum? I mean, he's proven he's pretty good when he plays. He just doesn't play. Is that fair?
No, that's the entire summation. Like, we could sum this up in 30 seconds. Ben Tate is really good when he plays. He doesn't always play.
Right. It's like a haiku. You can make a haiku out of it. I mean, he had 124 yards on only 22 carries, so he had 5.5 yards a carry. He had a catch for -2. I'm not really worried about that. But I mean, I think more importantly, he outtouched West and Crowell 3-1, right?
Yeah.
So I think for all of those that sort of maybe thought Crowell was going to get more action or that they were going to work West in, I think this is pretty obvious they're not, right?
I mean, they may if the game plan calls for it, but I think what you saw was what you saw in the win to the Titans, despite being down 4 scores, was their ideal offense. And I really think Ben Tate is smart in that he's chosen his situations well. I mean, he didn't choose Houston; he was drafted there, but that was a situation that fit him well. And the Browns with this running scheme and what I think is one of, if not the best offensive lines in football, like they are. It didn't matter who you plugged in. Like it was West, Crowell, it was Tate. They were all running for 4, 5, 6, 8 yards a pop consistently. I mean, they're going to stick with it because they have to, at least until Josh Gordon gets back. I'll be intrigued to see what happens when Gordon comes back. But their best offense right now is lining it up, running the football, Brian Hoyer, play action, limiting risk, etc. And Hoyer's been good. I don't want to sound like he's being carried by them. He's been fine in his own right. But, Tate this year especially, and maybe next year too, he signed a 2-year deal, right? That's what it was?
Yeah, it's a 2-year deal. He'll be there next
year. For the next 2 years, I'm comfortable in having him in a running back 2 discussion for a team. But there's always got to be a contingency plan involved.
Yeah, I mean, so, the rankings we have currently have him 21st. Which is a low-end running back too, which, I think that's fair. I mean, and like you said, if you have to just know that if you take him, you need a backup option.
Yep.
Right? You need a very strong running back 3, like it could be an Ahmad Bradshaw or whatever. But, and look, they proved that, I mean, even when they were down big, they didn't abandon the run.
Nope.
Right? Which was very encouraging. And I think, look, obviously it was the right play. They came back and won the game.
With 3 timeouts in the 2-minute drill, they still ran the ball 3 times within that 2-minute drill.
Right. Right. I mean, which, look, and that should give you a ton of confidence if you're a Tate Dynasty owner that they with the game on the line, they're still going to him. So,
yep.
And look, I agree with you. It's going to change when Gordon comes back, but look, I think it can only change for the better, especially for a Tate owner,
Maybe. It just depends how much trust they want to put in Hoyer and how much they want to feed Josh Gordon. I'm not saying.
And look, that NFC North, well, I'm not going to say it's wide open because I think the Bengals are pretty good, but now that you've got A.J. Green hurt, they're only 1 game back, or 1.5 or whatever it is. So.
No, I'm with you. I think the Browns are in an interesting position where they could end up being around 8-5, 7-6, etc. towards the end of the year, fighting for a playoff spot with the Ravens. I would imagine another division. I think the Bengals do win that division, but you're going to see sustained production from all of your Cleveland Brown offensive players because I think they're going to have a chance to be in games throughout the entire year. The end of the year schedule is difficult. They go through things like Denver, Carolina, Baltimore, and Indianapolis or something like that. Not necessarily in that order. It gets hard, but up until that point, you could see a lot of production out of I'll just call it the running backs of the Browns, whoever tends to be healthy at that time.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's probably fair. So, okay. So for dynasty leagues, I mean, where do you put Tate? Is he a guy that you would, be interested in trading for? And look, I realize every trade is different, so you can't cop out that way. But look, if he's your running back 2, and irregardless who your running back 3 is, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. That doesn't bother me at all.
I think so too. I mean, especially with the dearth of running backs available that are going to get volume. You know what I mean? I mean, look, we've got a guy in our dynasty league that I think his running back depth chart now is Rashad Jennings, Niall Davis, and Terrence West, and that's it. I mean, there's just no running backs out there, that are going to produce. So, yeah, I think Tate's good. I think he could stick around. It's just the health thing. I mean, there's just some guys that are doomed, seemingly from the beginning. So,
yeah.
But look, at the same time, the flip side of that is everyone could be injured on the next play. So it's not hey, you should hold you up in trading for a guy like Tate. So.
Yeah.
All right, so that was sort of look at the Week 5 stories, Jonathan. So Week 6, it's a third of the way through this season. I think it's fair to say it's probably about time, and I think you and I are probably in this boat, just opposite ends of the spectrum, where we're either looking at trading away assets or looking to trade for assets, which would be
I fall into the former.
Right. So look, okay. So we talked about some of the stuff we wanted to cover in Week 6. We sort of touched on this before, but with Cincinnati, with Green out, I guess the first question is, or the first topic is, how does that affect the rest of the offense?
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about specifically. I think the issue of not only A.J. Green possibly being out for an extended period of time hasn't been verified he's going to miss any time, but I think we all think he will. And Marvin Jones still isn't cleared to play. As far as I know, he's still questionable, if not out for this week. So
yeah, they're going to start Brandon Tate and I think Sansevah at receiver. So good luck with that.
Mohamed Sanu's got to be a starter. I mean, he's okay.
Yeah.
But either way, you're talking about an offense that was already sort of one-dimensional when it came to the receiving core with a limited quarterback. I think you could see a change in philosophy in the few weeks going forward of almost what I would call the 2011-2012 49ers, where you just run and run and run and run. Jeremy Hill's been pretty impressive so far in limited action. He's looked good. Gio Bernard is Gio Bernard. He's awesome and will always be awesome. And if I'm looking at this, I'm trying to find a way to limit and mitigate Andy Dalton as much as possible. And they have a very, very good offensive line. They can move people off the ball. I think you could see games coming up with 35, 40, 45 carries a game until they're confident they can get all their guys back and spread vertically, because I don't think they can do that right now. Let me rephrase that. No, they can't. They just can't.
Fair, yeah. Fair. Just make the hot take and be done with it.
Yeah. Dalton can't do it without A.J. Green. It's just not going to happen. So for the next 4 to 5 weeks or so, if this continues to be an issue, and even if A.J. Green plays but doesn't look himself, teams will pick up on that.
Yeah. I don't think anyone expects anything less. I mean, I think with Green, Dalton could make a case to enter sort of that second tier that we talked about before. But without Green, yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't think I can't see any scenario where Andy Dalton wills the Bengals, to wins. I just don't see it. So now look on the flip side of that, you could argue that by the time that the Green injury has healed itself, Dalton could be a pretty good buy low candidate, depending on what your needs are. I think, I think if anything, I think the person that stands to gain the most is probably Hill.
Yes.
Right? Meaning, if they're going to run more, but they don't want to necessarily give Gio Bernard 30 carries a game, which as a Bernard Dynasty owner, I understand. So I think Hill's value is about to be super inflated. And look, if it were me and Hill had a good stretch there and then, Green comes back, I'd look at probably moving Hill and taking advantage of that. I mean, is that crazy?
No, I'm totally okay with that. And all of this, like, we're taking a micro view on a macro league kind of thing, right? Like, we're talking about 4 or 5 weeks in a dynasty league where you don't have turnover. But these are the little things that will get you sort of the buy low, the buy low, sell high things that will get you an advantage throughout the year. To your point about Dalton, if you're trying to make a playoff push and Dalton has a bad 4 or 5 weeks and you are in need of a quarterback for the stretch run, he's someone I would look at trading when his value's down. Same thing with Hill in the next couple of weeks. I think you're going to see his value go up a little bit. The only thing that worries me is that Hugh Jackson's talked about not putting too much on the rookie, make sure he's not responsible for too much, etc. So, you hope they use him as a fully complemented running back. They don't, it's not a dead giveaway that if he's in there, they're not passing the ball because he can't protect to save his life kind of thing. But, yeah, I mean, I say that's all spot on. It'll be interesting to see if there is a receiver that steps up if A.J. Green misses time. I don't think there will be, but Marvin Jones may be the closest thing to that.
Yeah, A.J. Green, I think, I don't think he probably, he's viewed as sort of that in that elite level of receiver, but that may not be enough credit for what he does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to put him on a team with like a really good quarterback, I mean, it would be scary. It really would, what he could do. I gotta believe if he were on a team with a better quarterback than Dalton, I mean, he would enter that sort of Dez, Julio, Calvin airspace.
I think he's already there, but like you said, there's just no way. I mean,
I think he is, but when you're at that level and you're that close together and bunched up, the quarterback does make a difference. And look, Calvin Johnson and Matt Ryan, or Calvin Johnson and Julio and Dez Bryant, I would say have pretty good quarterbacks. All quarterbacks who I would take before Andy Dalton, that's for sure, right? So. Yeah. I think A.J. Green could be even better than he is now, but look, he's still pretty good. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I would love to see him. I'd love to see A.J. Green with a quarterback with scrambling ability. Like if he played on Washington or San Francisco or even Seattle, man, he'd be so much fun. But he doesn't. He plays in Cincy.
Well, look, they haven't re-signed him yet, so you never know.
Yeah,
but okay.
I'm just saying.
I don't know, man. I'm not going to say that yet. I mean,
franchise tag.
That's fine, and that will buy them one more year. But look, I don't know. I can't look. I think it's fair to say he's going to want more guaranteed money than old Andy Dalton, right?
Probably.
I mean, look, Mike Brown made that deal with Andy Dalton because he didn't have to owe him any guaranteed money. It was a Kaepernick deal, right? A.J. Green will not and should not settle for something like that. He shouldn't.
That's fair.
And I just think that it's going to end up. He's going to end. I mean, look, there's a ton of teams that will have plenty of cap space, whether it's like the Jets or the Dolphins or Jacksonville or whatever. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
So anyway, but that's a long way out. So
it is.
I think the other issue, or not issue, but I think the other topic we wanted to cover was the Patriots, which just likes to dick with people or what. But after an entire, I mean, you couldn't go a day the week before without some story about Brady being done. And it's the end of the dynasty, and Garoppolo's going to be it, and all that kind of stuff. And then, look, they go out and they blow out the Bengals. Now, it's not like, well, look, Brady had a good day, but it's not like he had a, Peyton Manning day. I think he had a little under 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is a very good day. But at the same time, I think it's still up for debate on if they're truly back or not, right? So you had Brady, who had, like I said, I think it was 292 and 2 touchdowns, which, while a good day, is not a good fantasy day compared to the other guys we talked about, even in this podcast, whether it's Manning or Rivers or whoever. So, I think the question is who, if anybody, is still a viable dynasty asset on the Patriots?
I don't have an answer for you.
So does that mean nobody, or
I mean,
look,
I don't know.
I think Gronkowski is, and I think you just got to roll with that. Meaning, look, if depending on the type of league you're in, you might, he might be worth the risk. I mean, look, again, so going back to our league, it's 1.5 points PPR, right? So a guy like Gronkowski is like super valuable. But in a standard league where it's, 1 point PPR for everybody, for me, it's not like Gronkowski would be up there with like Julius Thomas and Jimmy Graham, right?
No.
I think that's fair, right?
So to bring this full circle, I would say that the Patriots are a team full of a bunch of Ben Tates. Like just a bunch of guys that if you have them, you're like, all right, cool, I got them, whatever. But they're not moving needles. Like they're not, even Brady. Like Brady, this isn't a thing where it's just this year all of a sudden. Like his long ball numbers, his down year over year for the last 3 years. And part of that is the personnel, I get it, but I'm not using that as an excuse because, for years we heard about how Tom Brady did a bunch of stuff without anybody on offense. He just made them great. Like, he didn't lose the ability to make people great. He's just getting bad. And they've done nothing to supplement the offense around him, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with saying Tom Brady is getting bad because, age wins all things. But you have to get better people around him, and they haven't done that at all. And they're also using Shane Vereen like he's the next version of Corey Dillon. I don't know what the film with that thing. That drives me insane. Shane Vereen is the only one I would say has future dynasty ability, but that's only assuming they know how to use him. Oh.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say there's no more frustrating coach for fantasy people than Belichick, right?
How about Josh McDaniels?
Or Josh McDaniel. Fine, the combo of Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniel, okay? Because I agree with you. They're truly the one team that you just can't gauge on a weekly basis. Stephen Ridley had 113 yards last week.
Yeah.
That may never happen again, for all we know. Who knows? But you can't. It's just. I agree with you. It's just super frustrating because whenever you, one description I saw, which I think is completely appropriate, is when you think they're going to zig, they zag, right? Yeah. So you can't. Nothing is guaranteed in that offense. I think the one thing that's guaranteed is Gronkowski, personally. Just because the offense revolves around him,
So does their medical staff.
Look, that's with the giant caveat that Gronkowski doesn't get sidelined for a month. Okay.
And it's nothing against him. It's just you can't play that hard and that physical and expect your body to break down.
Well, and even look, he's got a serious injury history. I remember. I think you and I talked about this. An injury or an article written by Bill Barnwell on Grantland years ago. It wasn't even recent. It was years ago about Gronkowski's injury history dating back to Arizona. It's not like this is new. I think he had one awesome year, cashed in, and then he's been teasing people ever since. He really has. Seriously, look at his career numbers. He had 1 year over 1,000 yards. One.
I know.
Where it's kind of funny that he's still lumped in with Jimmy Graham, who's done it for a couple of years now. It's just man, they're just the biggest conundrum. They really are, and it's super frustrating. And look, I am all for if your strategy in dynasty leagues is to avoid any Patriots player, I wouldn't fault you for that. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know what you're going to get, So, yeah, it's just super. It's not like I guess it is disappointing. I guess that's the right word for that. Right? So, I don't know. Anyway, I think our advice is just avoid any Patriots players. Is that fair?
Yeah, and just for the record, talking about Tom Brady, if they cut him like at the end of this year, he would be 33 million of dead money. And next year,
All right, so he's not going anywhere. Got it.
Next year it'd be 16 million or 18 million of dead money. The year after that, it's 12 million of dead money. Like I understand, I understand the want to move on, but he's a 13 to 15 million cap hit no matter what year you cut him in the next 4 years.
Yeah, so he's entering like Chad Henne territory where.
Kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's I don't know if that's good or not, but.
It's a thing.
Anyway, all right. So for our third topic for Week 6, Jonathan, I think we'll just make this a hodgepodge. Who would you like to cover for this section?
I want to get them in before the game starts. The Houston Texans. We haven't talked a lot about them, but there's an interesting thing going on with them right now. Where if you watch them, they're 3-1. They seem to be good. They have the best player in football in J.J. Watt. Nobody can tell me anything different. He's the best player in football.
Agreed.
I
don't disagree with that.
God, he's so awesome. But there's this thing that's brewing underneath the surface a little bit. They're 3-1 completely in spite of their starting quarterback, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is he is awful, and the thing is, Arian Foster looks good enough this year. I'd be willing to say you could put the offense on him this year and run a competent offense because Hopkins looks really good. Andre Johnson looks like he's a decent number 2. He's not really lost it too much, and the offense can function with a good starting quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there is a change coming in Houston because I don't know what you replace him with. Like Tom Savage is he's the white version of Logan Thomas. He's a raw rookie.
Not Mallet?
Well, so that's the other thing, man. Like, how much longer? So, 1A, we're assuming Mallet is worth the damn. B, how much longer until they decide he actually knows the system, knows the players, and can get in there and make something happen? Because and the reason I want to bring it up now is because Houston is finally going to be on national television for the first time this year, and there's a decent chance we see him get
blown out.
Yeah, he's basically going to get exposed to the rest of the nation. That hey, this guy is kind of more or less awful. And so shit's going to hit the fan. But the thing is, no one's talking about it. No one's really reporting on it. I don't know how it affects the rest of the team, and if it does, I'm not telling you to go out and load up on all the Mallet you can, but something's going to give.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, I'm trying to recall the last time, and they're 3-2 by the way, so they're literally tied for the division lead, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the last time a winning team made a change, and all I can think of is, do you remember the Bills like 15 years ago with Flutie and Rob Johnson?
Look, don't even go that far back. How about 3 years ago with the Niners?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, never mind. But here's my point. That was due to injury, though, right?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so my point is I'm trying to think of a scenario where a decent team, for the supposed good of the team, made a switch like that. And look, it doesn't happen often. And I'm not saying O'Brien's not capable of it, but all I'm saying is it's going to be very hard to do that if you keep winning. And look, tonight can be the end of that, meaning I believe if they lose tonight, that's 3 losses in a row, right?
Yeah.
So that could be the spark that they go, you know what, I think we'll give Mallet a chance, which, look, everyone else in that division is, I think, 2 games back. Yeah, I mean, you've got the Titans at 1-4, and you've got the Jaguars at 0-5. So even if you lost tonight, you're 1 game back of Indianapolis. It's not like, oh God, like we run the risk of completely falling out of favor. I mean, you could run that risk, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they're literally, I think, a quarterback away from being a very good team. Is that fair?
Oh no, that's entirely fair. Like I was thinking about it earlier. Like the team is built, especially when they get Clowney back. The team will be built to win now. Like, they're not going to be lacking in enough areas to where you would be surprised they made the playoffs. This is sort of, I would say they're the AFC version of the Buccaneers for me. going into the season, I kind of knew their offensive skill position players were good. The defense should be amazing. Can the quarterback just do enough? Like, is the quarterback going to hinder you at all times? And unfortunately, he kind of has. So I think if there was a different option behind him, they've already made the switch, and it makes me wonder how much they really trust Ryan Mallett or Tom Savage at this point. Because
well, look with Savage, I wouldn't expect anything from Savage this year. He was, like you said, he was super raw coming in, and look, that's the reason they traded for Mallett, right? Because they needed something ahead of Savage. So in the event Fitzpatrick got hurt, they didn't have to turn to, like you said, the white version of Logan Thomas. So. Yeah, look, as long as they keep winning, they're not. Believe me, I don't see them making a change. But they play Indianapolis tonight, and if they lose that, they're 3-3, and they could say, you know what, screw it, give it to Mallett, and let's see what happens. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree. I think Mallett probably has more talent. It's just a matter of, hey, we don't want to turn the ball over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and look, in fairness, Fitzpatrick has proven he doesn't turn the ball over. He is no Matt Schaub, so it's okay. But, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a situation to monitor. And, look, you never know. If Mallett gets the nod halfway through the season and leads them to a lot of wins, he's going to be the starter next year on a pretty decent team,
For the record, I would challenge the the idea that he doesn't turn the ball over. Like Fitzpatrick for his career has 111 TDs and 99 interceptions. So plus 32 fumbles. So he has more turnovers than touchdowns in his career.
Really?
Yep.
Oh Jesus, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's kind of That's kind of what he's known for is streaks of incredibly good play and then incredibly bad play.
I was going to say, I mean, I remember a couple years ago, he was a top 12 fantasy quarterback. It wasn't like, he doesn't have a history of it, but...
Well, I mean, in Buffalo, look, he had 24 touchdowns and 23 interceptions in 2011. Like, that's plus 3,800 yards. Like, that'll make you good in fantasy. It's not going to make you good in reality, and they have to look at the reality around them. So.
Sure, and look, he signed a 2-year deal, but it's like $4 million guaranteed, so, they could just cut it. And look, I agree with you. Mallett's a free agent, but it wouldn't surprise me if they at least gave him a shot towards the end of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if they were out of it, they could just go, you know what, screw it. Let's see what Mallett has. And if he's got something, they re-sign him, and hey, it's all good. But if not, then then they don't. So.
Also, any fans of the Washington R's out there, if you want to go see what Kirk Cousins is as a football player and what he's going to be in the future, just go look at Ryan Fitzpatrick's career log. But that's what you have. So
which means he's going to start for at least 2 other teams. So that's okay.
Oh, probably. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. He's a gritty leader who has command of the huddle.
Well, and look, it goes back to that. It's one of my favorite sayings that even though there's 32 NFL teams, it doesn't mean there's 32 quarterbacks out there.
Yep. Always correct.
Yeah. So that's very possible. So, all right. So I think that covers the storylines for week 5 and 6. We'll go to the updated quarterback rankings. We do have viewers, Jonathan, by the way. So if anyone wants to maybe tweet us a question, they can at Dynasty_FFC. Twitter.com/Dynasty_FFC. So, I highlighted, Jonathan, some of the risers and the drops of the quarterback ranking. So let's get to the good news first. You've got Teddy Bridgewater up from 17 to 13, which, look, if you're in a standard league, he's on the fence as a quarterback 1, right? I don't know. What's your feeling about that? Is that fair? Is that about right? I mean, he's only had 1 game, but in fairness, that 1 game was pretty good. But again, and I could go all day. Again, it was against the Falcons. It's not like he tore up, like the Seahawks defense, right?
It was a very, very simplified game plan.
Sure.
A lot of, ironically, they gave him a bunch of read option stuff to do to simplify it for him, yet he never really ran read option stuff in college. It's really weird how people, they're running him a ton more, and he never ran in college ever. I mean, like, I'm a little biased here. I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to be a superstar one day, and I think it might come pretty soon. Because I think his talent, the things you would look for in a quarterback, which are insane accuracy under pressure, the ability to diagnose and get people in the correct play, and footwork. Like the four things that are really hard to coach up, and you either have or you don't. Or you absorb or you don't, I should say, because footwork can be taught, but it has to be absorbed. He already has these things in abundance, so I think he's going to be really successful sooner rather than later. Looking at the list, though, like he's above Phillip Rivers. I think that's insane. Like if I had a game to win tomorrow, and that's a cliche, and I get that, but he's ranked ahead of Jay Cutler. Like Jay Cutler is better than him as a quarterback right now. But I would rather have Bridgewater. Like if I have to make a cut on my roster, and someone tells me I have to cut a quarterback, and I have to cut either Cutler or Bridgewater, I'm cutting Cutler and I'm keeping Bridgewater.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. I am
Wow.
that high.
That is a hot take.
I mean, no. So I mean, look. I want you to look at the situation around him. Like, if Peterson comes back this year, which who knows? I don't know. He may or may not.
Look, he's not.
That's fine. Whatever. So here's the thing.
Not after you smoke weed after you're already out on bail. Okay.
No, whatever.
I'm not knocking weed. I know. I'm just saying, like, you have the entire world on you, and
just saying, he's not in the NFL drug program, so he can not get suspended. That's all I'm saying. So, but here's my point on this, right? So he's going to be gone this year. So Bridgewater's going to have a chance to work with Kyle Rudolph, who when he comes back, who's a very good tight end. Cordarrelle Patterson, who should be a very good receiver, but hasn't really been used correctly yet. Greg Jennings, who is still pretty good. Jerry Fromm. Like, they have a very good offense that he can work around. If they know that Peterson's coming back next year, and he will come back, that makes them that much it's an easier situation to work with. If he doesn't come back and he's gone, then they have somebody to replace Peterson. You know, they can get 80% of what he does at 10% of the cost, which is a huge deal. I think even if Peterson went off this year, they were going to cut him this year anyway because of the salary involved. But if they can take away that $14 million, draft somebody that does sort of what he does, and then take that $12 million and put it somewhere else in the team, I think you could see a big time. Look, you know what? Let me ask you this. How many other NFL rosters are there right now that you would rather have going forward than the Vikings?
We're talking offense or offense and defense?
We'll say for this conversation, just offense.
You know, for me, well, look, I see your point, right? Meaning you've got guys like Patterson. You've got guys like McKinnon, who I think have proven to be pretty good.
Yep.
You know, I don't view. There's a lot I would rather have, but I get your point. They're an offense that's trending upwards.
Yep.
Right. And look, I don't know. Bridgewater, I think he'll be pretty good. But if he's going to be, you know, I think that top tier or not. I don't know. That's a tough question. To me, I can't figure them out yet. And for Bridgewater, like I said, he played Atlanta, right? Like, you have to take that with a grain of salt, right?
Sure.
And I want to believe it. I really do, because I think the Vikings have, oh God, they've so needed a quarterback for so long.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they really have. And I really hope he's it, because look, I think that's a great story, right? Meaning, you know, was like the consensus top overall pick, and then had a really crappy, you know, combine and private workout and all that. Barely got into the first round. But look, I think the coaching staff in place in Minnesota is really good, quite honestly.
Yep.
I would love to have Mike Zimmer as my coach and Norv Turner as my offensive coordinator.
And that's the part of this that people need to realize, that the people around him are professionals that will know how to develop them correctly. It's a huge difference.
Right.
So, and for the record, all my opinions of Teddy Bridgewater have nothing to do with that Atlanta game. The Atlanta game was nice, but like I've said from day one, like his absolute ceiling, if everything goes perfectly right and he reaches his entire ceiling and potential as a quarterback, he's a 2-inch taller version of Drew Brees to me.
Right.
Like that's.
Yes, but at the same time, you still need a little bit of help from the offensive scheme, right?
Sure.
So, and not to say Minnesota can't get there, and they could. I mean, you never know. But I think at the very least he's going to be a starter for many years. And look,
Yeah.
that's half the battle, right, in Dynasty leagues, is just getting a guy that's going to be there 5 years from now.
I would take him over Nick Foles right now.
Wow. That's an even hotter take. Wow.
I don't get the Foles thing, man.
Good for you. Interesting. Wow.
Yep.
That stuns me. Okay, so we covered Bridgewater, which, look, not to disagree with you, and like we talked about before earlier in the podcast, I think there's just a lot of quarterbacks in that level that I would be completely okay with, right?
Yeah,
so the guy ahead of him is Romo. I'd be okay with that. The guy behind him is Cutler. I'd be okay with that. The guy behind Cutler is Rivers. I'm okay with that. That's 15 guys, right?
Yeah.
The only guy in front of Bridgewater that I think I have no problem putting Bridgewater in front of is Griffin right now, right?
I understand that.
Completely. Look, Griffin he's just too toxic for me right now to even consider. He really is. I mean, look, he had the rookie year, and there was so much promise. And look, he did it the first year, but it's been all downhill, man. So I don't get it. But anyway, so the other riser on the list, Jonathan.
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, who was unrated going into this month, but jumped all the way up to 27th. So let's just get your hot take on that. Let's go.
The hot take is it's pretty much the same as it's always been. And his arm strength is a little better than last year, so kudos to there. But he makes so many bad decisions. Like, you can't. It is like when he came into the league, I thought he wasn't going to succeed because I didn't think he was physically talented enough. To his credit, his arm's gotten stronger. He's gotten better physically as he's been in the league. So kudos to him. But man, his bad decision rate, and just watching him play, he puts in some throws that just make you think, "Holy shit, that was awesome." There's some throws he drops on the sidelines that are really impressive. But the problem is that he makes those, and that enables him to go and do the stupidest shit in the world later on down the line, and it's just maddening.
And look, before you even have to say anything more, I completely agree.
Okay.
Like, I mean, to me, it's a complete repeat of what Jake Gruden had in Cincinnati with Andy Dalton, right? So, look, is he, like, good enough to not completely hose you? Yeah. But is he good enough to, like, get you to the Super Bowl? No. Like, definitely not.
I don't think so.
If Robert Griffin wasn't on the team, would Cousins have a pretty good outlook for maybe a couple years? Yeah, I would agree with that. He could be, a low-end quarterback too, right? Like, so if you're in a 2-quarterback league and he was your second,
yeah,
that's fine. But yeah, I don't see it. I really don't. And what's even more frustrating is it seems like they don't have enough volume to support the other guys on that offense, right? Like at the receiver, it's either Garcon or Jackson. It's never both, which is super scary if you own one because it's like, great. Neither one is going to be like consistently the number one guy. It's just going to be like, hey, what did they think when they woke up that day?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I'm with you.
Yeah, it's just look, don't get me wrong. I mean, we have them on the rankings at the site, which is dynastyfantasyfootballcentral.com at 27th, which I think that's right. I mean, that's a quarterback 3. So if he's your quarterback 3 this season, that's fine. But yeah, I don't know what to make of him going forward. And look, the real question is going to be when Griffin comes back, what do they do? Do they give it back to Griffin or do they go to Cousins? And I think it's probably going to be contingent on, hey, are they winning or not, right?
Honestly, I don't even think it matters with that because the situation's unique enough for the first-year head coach where they still have a little bit of a time where they need to evaluate people. And I'm going to make the assumption that Kirk Cousins continues to play at this 1.5 to 1 TD to turnover ratio, and that they aren't going to be in a position to make a playoff push. And if he keeps on playing at that level, there's no reason not to give it back to Robert Griffin. You have to know. Like, you just have to know if he's the guy or not. And I think he actually looked really good the first 2 weeks of the year. He was staying in the pocket. He was making plays. There's nothing to suggest physically with Robert that he can't make the transition to being a pocket quarterback. Like, if you're telling me he can't do it, it's not based off of anything other than him being basically a runner in his past. He's got the arm, he has the accuracy, he's smart enough to diagnose defenses. It's just going to take time, and they have to know before you cut bait. You just have to know if that time is worth it for him. So I think it's more important to that franchise to find out about Robert Griffin than it is to give Kirk Cousins 6 more games of experience for what? Like, so. And although I'm pushing Cousins right now, he is 12th in DVOA in quarterbacks, so he's not.
Well, and I think it has the potential to develop into like a Matt Schaub situation when he was in Atlanta, right? Yeah. Meaning some team, trades maybe a 3rd or 4th rounder for him, assuming he's going to be the guy. Now given it didn't work out in Seattle, where Matt Flynn signed as a free agent and ended up being cut after the first year. But look, there's plenty of teams that would love to have someone that at least gives them a shot, right?
Correct. Yep.
I mean, look, I have no doubt Tennessee would love Kirk Cousins right now.
How about back to the team we just talked about in Houston?
Yeah, they could probably go for that too. So, look, I got no doubt Cousins, he will have a job somewhere next year. It may not be Washington, but it will be somewhere. I have no doubt.
Yep.
So, all right. So, I don't know. Let's first get to our first Twitter question, Jonathan.
Yes.
Which actually is a YouTube question. So,
even better.
Robert asks, pick 2 out of these 3 guys in a PPR league. Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
Joique Bell, Alfred Morris, or Ben Tate. And since this is the Dynasty channel, we'll assume it's in a Dynasty league. So, Bell, Morris, or Ben Tate?
For me, it's pretty easy, actually. It's Morris and Tate. One of my better friends down here in Austin, he's a huge Detroit Lions fan. He's from Detroit. And he keeps on talking about Joique Bell. And I saw it. Out of curiosity, I've watched a few Lions games to see what it is he's excited about, and I really just don't get it. If you're going to tell me that you want to hold on to Bell for the purposes of I know he's going to get the opportunities, I'll say okay. But that is his only value. Like, once those opportunities leave, he's not worth anything to anyone. He's a guy. Whereas at least with Ben Tate, I know he has talent because we've seen it on display for a few years, and the opportunity's there. And same thing with Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris, man, that's a function of the offense, right? Like, when they're up and they're trying to establish the run and run the clock out, he looks good. He had a few 10, 15-yard runs even against Seattle that he looked pretty good. It wasn't an overwhelming situation for him. But they're just caught playing from behind so often. But for me, it would be, in this order, it would probably go Tate, Morris, and then Bell. Yeah,
and you know what? I would agree with that. At least with, maybe not the order, but definitely with which 2 I would take. Look, the Lions' offense is not a running offense. It just isn't. Mm-hmm. And Bell, I was looking up his stats for this year. It's actually kind of disappointing, quite honestly. I mean, he's averaging for the year 3.2 yards a carry. He's got 1 touchdown. Mm-hmm. He sat out the last game with a concussion. So, look, he's already 28.
Is he really?
Yeah. Which, again, that surprised me too. I mean, anyone that's as close to us in age than not, that's a concern. But I think it's pretty easy. I mean, look, Tate is no doubt the number 1 guy, and I like to think they scheme more towards running than passing in Cleveland
at the moment.
Yeah. Look, even when they don't, at least I think it's pretty apparent they're not going to share carries in Cleveland, right? Yeah. I mean, look, they proved that he out-carried, Tate did, Crowell and West at least 3-1. So that I don't see that as a big deal. And Morris, man, it just he's very talented, which is very unfortunate because it's almost like Jay Gruden's going to get someone to take the passing downs next year, right?
Yep.
Which, look, is fine, but that'll relegate Morris to nothing more than a Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis type role, which is just, it's not really fair, I guess is the word. I mean, He's averaging 4.1 yards a carry this year, but look, out of the 5 games this year, he's gotten more than 20 carries twice, right?
Yep.
Which, just that's not his game. His game is to wear you down. So,
yeah.
But at the same time, even in limited work, he's still averaging over 4 yards a carry, and he's got 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
He's still, I think, probably the best runner out of the 3. And look, it could even be a case of he goes to another team in a year, more valuable than he is now. He's a free agent in 2016, so that's possible. And he's only 25.
That's the big thing here.
Yeah, especially for dynasty stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And then Tate, even though, it seems like he's been around and is a veteran, he's 26. So between those two, you have at least 2 years over Bell.
Yep. And with Morris, he just got done playing Seattle, who knocked him around a little bit. One of those games, he only got 12 carries because they lost 14-45 to New York. I think we'll see him come closer to that 4.5 to 4.7 yard per average for his career as the season goes along. But I think there's more promise, not only with Washington, but also more what you said as a free agent going down the road. I think he's someone that can go somewhere else and have a lot more fantasy success because they'll make him a larger part of the offense. Because they do split a lot of carries between him, Halou, even Young, the fullback. They all share responsibilities, so it makes it hard right now for him to get really anything inside the 10. He's only in there for first and second down, and that's it. So it's so hard. It's so hard.
Right. So, yeah, I think we're in agreement on that. Morris and Tate are your options there. So to round out this podcast, Jonathan, let's look at the big drops in the quarterback rankings. Let's just get these two out of the way. You had E.J. Manuel drop from 24th to 28th. He'll probably drop further. And Josh McCown from 32nd to 37th. Both of those a function of the fact that they aren't starting anymore, quite honestly. So I guess just real quick, is there any hope for Manuel? Does he latch on anywhere?
No.
Okay. And I would agree with that. I didn't see it before, and obviously not now. And then I don't know if you caught the story this week where after he was benched, I guess it turns out Jimbo Fisher, his coach at Florida State, pretty much told people, look, he's a backup.
Yep.
He's not a starter. Don't draft him as a starter. And I don't know, man. You got to wonder what Doug Whalen in Buffalo's thinking. I don't know if he's just in ultimate FU mode, I'm going to do this or what. But it didn't work out. And look, I'm not saying Kyle Orton had a pretty game in Detroit, but look, they won, which is going to give them more credence. So. But I think it's fair to say there's probably there's no point in keeping Manuel on dynasty rosters. Is that right?
No, there's none. If you follow a lot of people on Twitter that are heavily involved in scouting, but still right on the internet, there's one guy, NFLosophy, who's a very good follow. Chris Brown at Smart Football's a very good follow. Both of them on the same day when Manuel got benched. Both of them said they put a link to their pre-draft grades on him. They both had E.J. Manuel as a 7th round / undrafted free agent grade for quarterback. So this isn't just Buffalo making a rogue decision. This is basically the industry all knew.
Well, and even Jimbo Fisher, his coach, gave him a 3rd round grade.
Yep.
Which really makes you wonder, what were you thinking, Buffalo, right?
From all accounts, everyone you talk to, even those people I talked about who gave him a shitty grade, they said, look, if there was ever a person you wanted to lead your team and be the face of a franchise, it's this guy.
Sure.
Standing character, great in front of cameras, excellent in the locker room, and they just assumed they could make him good, I guess.
Right, I get that, but you don't
draft for that.
I was going to say, I would have to think it's a lot easier to teach leadership or whatever you want to call it over skill, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm pretty sure Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, they've got the skill part down. It's just a matter of all the other, quote, intangible stuff, right? So,
Correct.
yeah, if you still have E.J. Manuel, like, feel free to cut him at any time. So.
Oh, immediately. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not seeing trade him, but no one's going to want him.
Right. So another question, which, this is a little dicier, is McCown from Tampa. So what's your initial thoughts on him?
Cut him too?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, even if he comes back and plays, and that's fine, you can't convince me there's value there. He's not good. And even if he comes back and plays and he's not good, like I'm pretty sure he isn't, they're going to draft someone else to take his place. Like, there is no long-term value there. I would say the longer Mike Glennon plays, there's no short-term value there. Because Glennon, at least with his faults, and there are many, has made that offense functional. Mm-hmm. And he actually, ironically, at 6'7" and looking like a giraffe, he does a better job of avoiding pressure within the pocket, does a pretty good job of sidestepping rushers, and just throwing the ball up to grabs. That's the thing. Josh McCown was supposed to play basketball with these guys, but what they figured out was he gets pressure and his eyes go down, man. It goes straight to the rush. He's not sidestepping and just throwing up for grabs. He's pulling the ball down, trying to rush, then reload and put his eyes back in the field. And it really, when you have an offensive line like that that's not the best, you have to have a quarterback that can stand in there, keep his eyes up, know where I'm going to call his blankie is, and Vincent Jackson, and just know where he can throw it up to. And at least Glennon's done that.
Yeah, I was higher on Glennon, I think, than most before the season. It's really going to come down to, for Tampa, what they do in the offseason, right? Meaning, if they draft a quarterback, then Glennon's done. If they don't, though, that gives Glennon, I think, that buys him some more time. And, like you said, they brought McCown in to sort of replicate what he did in Chicago with Alshon Jeffrey and Marshall and, look, even Martellus Bennett. But, look, I think it's fair to say the combination of Vincent Jackson, Mike Evans, and Austin Seferian-Jenkins did not equal Marshall, Jeffrey, and Bennett, right? And McCown by himself was not enough to overcome the difference, right?
No, you're right. Totally right.
So, look, I personally, I'm a big Glennon fan. I think he's got the skill. Look, I'm not going to say he's ever going to enter that upper echelon of quarterback rankings, but look, if he enter that second tier we've talked about where he produces and is no different than your Tom Brady's of the world, I really think he could eventually. I really do. And look, he's got the weapons there, at least from a dynasty perspective, in Evans and Seferian-Jenkins. Maybe not this year, I agree, but if he has the starting job going into next year, I'm buying on that.
That's fair. My order would be draft pick, Glennon, myself, and then McCown. Like, that's how, if I could own anyone for Dynasty, that's how it would be. And whoever they draft, I think, is going to be the one that gets that job, and I think they draft someone very high next year, because that's really all they're missing is that. But if they keep Glennon there, I think you're right. There is a chance to be, I would say, more than functional in that offense. So,
I would agree. The last quarterback we have to cover is Tom Brady, which we sort of touched on before, so I don't think we need to rehash that a whole lot. But he dropped from 13th to 18th, which is a pretty steep drop. But I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that at this point. I think every quarterback I'm looking at ahead of him in our rankings that's fair. I would take any quarterback probably ahead of him in Dynasty. Would you?
I'll take that a step further. People below him that I would take right now, I would take Roethlisberger. I would actually take Andy Dalton. I would take Flacco. I would take Eli Manning. I would take Alex Smith.
All right, no. Point made.
I wouldn't take any of the rookies or the young people, but yeah, like there's so little upside to him right now because they're just doing nothing to help or fix him. Like, I don't want people to think the Bengals game was all of a sudden them riding the ship on everything. That was a really good matchup for them. The Bengals had the 30-second rush defense by DVOA in football. And all the Patriots really want to do is just run the football as much as possible and take play action off of that, and that's what they did. So kudos. It was an awesome week on national TV. That's great. But they've done nothing to show that they can correctly draft and correctly develop those draft picks on offense to help him out. And he's 37, man. It's not getting any easier for him. The people around him aren't getting any better. And those other people we talked about, at least with like Roethlisberger, it's a functional offense. With Alex Smith, at least you get these cheap rushing yards for no reason every once in a while. Flacco, it looks like, is actually in a bit of a renaissance in that offense. But and at least Dalton's young. Like I can point to Dalton and be like, well, at least he's young and can throw to AJ Green a lot. So, yeah, if I have Brady right now, I'm trying to sell him as much as I can, hoping somebody just cashes in on his name cachet.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if there's anything else to say on that.
Yeah.
He's just a guy at this point.
Yep. In reality and in fantasy, which is sad because, you know, he's been pretty much a staple in this whole industry for about a decade now. So. Yeah,
but it's funny. Just sort of touch on a broader subject. You know, we talk about quarterbacks entering the season. From a dynasty perspective, and they can. I think you and I both agreed. Look, even if you have a quarterback that's in his mid to late 30s, you're okay, right? Like you had Breeze, who is 35, Brady at 37, Manning at 38. I don't think Romo at 34. I don't think we really considered it an issue before, but quite honestly, it kind of is, I think, at least this year.
Realizing about age of quarterback is that, yeah, they can play longer, but it's all in how they perceive and process pressure, right? And the thing that Brady is struggling with right now is just perceiving and processing pressure. He's not. The offensive line isn't great, and he's seeing ghosts, man. He's seeing things that aren't there, and he's not seeing things that are there. And I don't know that he's physically the same, but he's physically good enough still. At least with Romo and Breeze, those quarterbacks, like, they're struggling at the moment, but they're seeing pressure well, they're avoiding pressure well, and they're still making a lot of the same throws they had in the past, so they don't worry as much. And as long as they continue to do that, then you can hold on to them. I'll say anyone that owns an older quarterback, like we're talking about, once you notice that they aren't handling pressure as well as they used to, that's when it may be time to bail out. Because even if it's not their fault, you don't fix offensive line issues during the year. Like, it's just really hard to do. So.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would. All right. Anything else, Jonathan, that you want to cover for the folks before we head out?
T.Y. Hilton just had a 54-yard touchdown pass from Andrew Luck, and he already has 2 catches for 94 yards.
That's exactly what I was looking at.
So that's pretty exciting.
Can I just say, I mean, look, T.Y. Hilton is, God, he's so underrated, at least from a fantasy perspective. Like, I'm not going to act like I know anything about, scouting and if he should last, very long, but. Man, fantasy-wise, he's really good, right?
Yeah. No, I like him a lot.
I mean, if he's your receiver 2 this year, you've done pretty well, right?
Yeah.
I just.
No. Now they're saying the touchdown was a Trent Richardson 5-yard touchdown. But either way, he still got 2 for 94.
Oh,
or 2 for 89, sorry.
Really?
Yeah. But still. The point is still valid. Like, he's incredibly underrated because he's the one deep threat on that team, and Andrew Luck can get him the.
Well, that's too bad. I have T.Y.
I know, for you.
No. Anyway, all right. So then we'll conclude this episode, Jonathan, and we'll be back next week to look at the Week 6 stories and the Week 7 headlines, I guess you can call it. So you can check us out at dynastyfantasyfootballcentral.com. We're on Twitter at Dynasty_FFC. For Jonathan Scott, I'm Michael Moore, and we will see you next time.
Later, everyone.